Don't kid yourself. There is no such thing as a perfect crime. I know that from experience. I've investigated and tried so many criminal cases, including murders. So tell me, what is going on with the FBI and the Pima County Sheriff that they don't even have a person of interest? Nancy Guthrie was kidnapped nearly 2 weeks ago, but the details of this case, or the lack of them, is growing unconscionable. The FBI has released details about the suspect seen in the front door video, but it turns out the details are so vague that millions of American men match the description. So what's going on with this case? Here's what President Trump said earlier.
Somebody either knew what they were doing very well or they were rank amateurs. Either way, it's not a good situation.
Also had tonight, they worked 43 days without pay during the last government shutdown, TSA workers, and they might have to do it again, but for how long this time? Plus, Secretary Marco Rubio's warning to the world.
The old world is gone, frankly, the world I grew up in, and we live in a new era in geopolitics, and it's going to require all of us to sort of re-examine what that looks like and what our role is going to be.
And the Epstein drama now hits the Obama White House and the global investment bank Goldman Sachs. But first, it's been nearly 2 weeks since Nancy Guthrie was kidnapped from her home in Tucson, Arizona. 2 weeks with no suspect name. 2 weeks with no proof of life from the criminal who grabbed her in the middle of the night. Well, at least we have this, but it isn't much. In fact, it's close to nothing. Last night, the FBI gave us this, quote, "The suspect is described as a male, approximately 5'9" to 5'10" tall, with an average build," end quote. Are you kidding me? According to Google, the average American male is 5'9". So a note to the FBI, thanks for nothing. And guess what? Social media knew this and announced it days ago. Look at this post on Tuesday from Walter Kurt. He's an investigative journalist at Town Hall. Walter did the calculations from just looking at the released video, and guess what? He said the suspect 2 days ago was likely about 5'10". Okay, so what else do we know? There is a little more, but not a lot. The FBI also identified the brand of the backpack worn by the man in the video. It is a black Ozark Trail hiker pack. But here's the grim news. It's not unique. Anyone can get it at Walmart for $10.88. The FBI is obviously desperate and hitting a wall. Another clue to that is that the FBI just raised the reward for information. The FBI is now offering $100,000, doubling what it was offering before. That doesn't happen when the FBI has a suspect in its crosshairs. Senior correspondent John Huddy joins me from Tucson. John?
Yeah, and Greta, speaking of the backpack, I have one of those backpacks. My photographer, John Che, went to a Walmart that's about 10 minutes from here and was able to pick this up. You're right, it's about $10. They're a high theft item, by the way, according to one of the employees that we talked to at this particular Walmart. But you can find them at all the Walmarts. There's about 15 Walmarts just in the Tucson area alone. And by the way, I'm 5'10", though I lie and say 5'11" sometimes. But that said, as far as this investigation goes, the FBI has increased that reward, doubled it from $50,000 to $100,000. There's some who feel that should have been done a lot sooner, but nonetheless, for any information leading to the discovery of Nancy Guthrie or an arrest and conviction of anyone involved in this case. And as far as the suspect goes, the suspect seen in that Nest camera video and the images released by the FBI, well, they released a few more identifying details as you were going through, and I want to kind of repeat that for our viewers. They say the suspect is described as a male, approximately 5'9" to 5'10", with an average build, and in the video, they go on to say he's wearing a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker backpack like the one that I just showed you. We saw investigators, FBI agents, back on the ground here yesterday, as we reported to you, basically setting up that forensics tent and then doing, presumably, a measurement of that archway, because one of those investigators had essentially a specialized kind of measuring apparatus that they were able to do. There were some pictures taken of that, and then hence, a little bit later, we had these new identifying details. Also, FBI agents, as we know, have been canvassing the area, 2-mile radius in the Catalina Foothills area here where Nancy Guthrie lives, looking for any and all evidence, though I could tell you this, it's been raining all day. So there's concerns that if there is potential, if they do find anything else on the ground, gloves or something like that, of course, any DNA or forensics evidence that could be washed away because of the rain that's been coming down at times pretty hard throughout the afternoon. And as the investigation continues tonight in day 13, Greta, there's been reports of contention between Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos and federal authorities, as I've been told by some law enforcement sources, kind of a history of strained relations between the two. Reuters reporting that Nanos confirmed this, by the way, in some interviews with local media, but he sent a glove found actually inside Nancy Guthrie's house at the crime scene to a private testing facility in Florida that Pima County is contracted with for many years, rather than the FBI's lab in Quantico, Virginia. Well, Nanos said that the FBI actually gave the green light on this because other DNA evidence that was taken, like swabs from Guthrie family and, other evidence was sent to the same lab. So they wanted to keep it all there. And he says that they've been working very well together, both Pima County and federal authorities. Whether that's true or not really remains to be seen. But here on the ground, a lot of questions, particularly from neighbors who have been showing up over the last 13 days, particularly the last couple days, leaving flowers outside Nancy Guthrie's home, next to her mailbox, as you see there, and letters of support, solidarity. I spoke with one gentleman and his wife who were here last night as well. Here's in part what he told me.
And we're all heartbroken. This is a really special community, and we just don't want to see this whole neighborhood in such trauma. And our hearts are with the Guthrie family.
Have FBI agents been to your house? You've talked to them? Yeah. Yeah. What have they asked you?
To surveil our backyard or property and our cameras, see if there's anything, and we don't have anything on our cameras.
Nothing came up?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, and that's really been the case from other neighbors that I've been talking to today as well, even though the feds and Pima County are still asking them for any and all Ring camera video, Nest camera video, surveillance video, and, and so on and so forth. Today, meantime, Greta, the only action we've seen at the Guthrie residence were some pool cleaners that were there that showed up a little bit earlier this afternoon, raising more questions about whether this is still even an active crime scene at Nancy Guthrie's house, now 13 days into this investigation. Greta?
John, you mentioned there's a glove found in the house, and the first thing I think of is, if you can find single gloves all over my house. Open a drawer and there's a lost mate. We don't know where the other one. But was this?
Right.
But was it found in any particular place? Was it found in her bedroom, or is there any reason to believe this is involved, or they just picked up a glove?
Yeah, unclear. We don't have that information, and the sheriff's department sent out a message saying there wasn't going to be any press briefing or interviews today. So we're waiting on that. Apparently, Nanos said that there were a number of gloves that have been sent to this lab for testing, including a glove that was found on the side of the road, as you may recall, by FBI agents about 1.5 miles from here. Whether there's any link, whether there's any connection, whether any of the DNA evidence, like there's a match or anything like that, remains unclear. And that's among the unanswered questions tonight, again, 13 days into this investigation, Greta.
John, thank you. And as an aside, I say 5'3", which is pushed in a little bit too. I understand adding a little height to that. Anyway, John, thank you. Coming up.
Thanks.
Coming up, Secretary of State Marco Rubio uses some choice words. That when the record continues.
I am sure you're aware foods contain no more than 10 to 12 minerals. This is because of topsoil mineral depletion. Your body needs many more than 12 minerals to be healthy. How can you get them? I recommend Immuno 150. This incredible nutritional supplement is different. It doesn't contain metallic minerals like most vitamin and mineral supplements. Immuno 150 contains 70 easily digested plant-derived minerals and 80 additional nutrients. There is nothing like it. The 70 plant minerals are the key to its effectiveness, its popularity, and its high reorder rate. If you want a food supplement that produces outstanding results and really makes a difference, try Immuno 150. Look at the 3 videos on the Immuno 150 website and consider placing an order. Thank you.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, Doctor.
Power, as you know, another carrier is going out shortly. So we'll see it out. If we could get it settled for once and for all, that would be good.
Who would you want to take over?
What?
Who would you want to take over?
I don't want to talk about that. There are people.
Secretary Duffy since Wednesday's incident.
No, he's doing a great job.
Inside that the Iranian nuclear sites have been totally obliterated. What's left to go after?
Well, you could get whatever the dust is down there. That's really the least of the mission. If we do it, that would be the least of the mission. But we, probably grab whatever's left. It has been obliterated, as you know.
Would you accept anything less than zero nuclear enrichment?
We don't want any enrichment. We don't want enrichment. Thank you very much, everybody.
That's obviously President Trump in Fort Bragg. He's heading now on Air Force One. He's boarding Air Force One and will be departing from North Carolina in a few moments. Meanwhile, do you remember this?
For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values. Everything from our Ukraine policy to digital censorship is billed as a defense of democracy. But when we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard.
Last year, Vice President J.D. Vance made a splash at the annual Munich Security Conference with his blistering speech. Vance will not be speaking this year. This time, it will be Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Today, Secretary Rubio arrived in Munich, Germany. The annual event, which, by the way, began in 1963, is regarded as the world's leading forum for debating challenges to international security. Tomorrow, Secretary Rubio will speak. Before he left U.S. soil for Munich, we got a hint of how Rubio's speech might sound.
The world is changing very fast right in front of us. The old world is gone, frankly, the world I grew up in, and we live in a new era in geopolitics, and it's going to require all of us to sort of re-examine what that looks like and what our role is going to be. And we've had many of these conversations in private with many of our allies, and they are our allies, and we need to continue to have those conversations, and I think Saturday, hopefully, and the meetings we'll have there will move us in that direction.
National security correspondent Carla Babb joins me. Carla.
Hey, Greta. Well, as Rubio said, it sounds like the Trump administration is just changing the rules. NATO hits the 2% GDP defense spending goal, and then Trump bumps it to 5%. This week, NATO stepped up in a big way with big changes. If you remember Trump's threats to take Greenland from NATO ally Denmark, do you remember that, saying that they couldn't protect the Arctic? Well, the alliance started a new mission to focus on Arctic security, and that includes continuous exercises in, guess where? Greenland. And I spoke with NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen about this. He told me he'd been trying for years to get an Arctic strategy off the ground, but couldn't get NATO allies to agree. Denmark tried again last year, couldn't get everyone to agree. After the U.S.-led push, it's happening. And that's not all. NATO's European allies also agreed this week to take control over all the joint commands, including the one based in the United States right here in Norfolk. Rasmussen praised the changes and even gave President Trump a nod, along with Putin, for motivating NATO's increased defense spending.
We realize that after Putin's attack on Ukraine, we are all in danger in Europe. So we have to step up our defense efforts. So that's really the driving force. But I would also give President Trump credit for his harsh rhetorics. I don't think anybody can be in doubt that also the US wants us to invest more.
Now, Greta, Trump still says he really wants Greenland, telling reporters just a few hours ago that the U.S. is negotiating right now for the island. And this week, he reposted an AI map showing Greenland and Canada, another NATO ally, as part of the United States. Now, Rasmussen said this is impossible.
It would, of course, be unheard if one ally, namely the U.S., militarily attacks another ally, namely Denmark, to grasp territory from that ally. That would be the end of NATO. I don't think Congress would accept that. No, Greenland is not for sale. And as all real estate agents know, if an estate is not for sale, it can be purchased.
Now, we broke this earlier. Ukrainian officials have confirmed Secretary of State Marco Rubio will meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at 5 p.m. local time tomorrow to discuss how to end Russia's brutal war against Ukraine. All eyes will be on those two men as we approach the 4-year mark since Russia illegally invaded Ukraine. 2025 was the deadliest year yet for civilians, nearly 3,000 killed, Greta. And Rasmussen said the reason was simple.
We have seen the deadliest year for Ukrainians because Putin does not want peace. And he wants to accelerate the attacks on Ukraine to force the Ukrainians on their knees to beg for peace on Russian terms.
So, Greta, big shakeups across the Arctic and across NATO. The main focus, European leaders told me, though, remains how to help Ukraine.
Carla Babb, thank you. Coming up, the Epstein files has now hit former President Barack Obama's White House. Plus, here we go again. Our TSA workers going to have to go without another paycheck. That when the record continues.
If you don't change that, I'm going to Mrs. Reagan and I'm resigning.
The Reagans, the Bushes, and the Clintons. White House usher Chris Emery saw it all. Discover the secret lives of the first families. Watch White House Usher, the inside story.
I am sure you're aware foods contain no more than 10 to 12 minerals. This is because of topsoil mineral depletion. Your body needs many more than 12 minerals to be healthy. How can you get them? I recommend Immuno 150. This incredible nutritional supplement is different. It doesn't contain metallic minerals like most vitamin and mineral supplements. Immuno 150 contains 70 easily digested plant-derived minerals and 80 additional nutrients. There is nothing like it. The 70 plant minerals are the key to its effectiveness, its popularity, and its high reorder rate. If you want a food supplement that produces outstanding results and really makes a difference, try Immuno 150. Look at the 3 videos on the Immuno 150 website and consider placing an order. Thank you.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dried premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and they're gonna love it.
From drained investment accounts and stolen tax returns to lost wages and hiring lawyers, identity theft can cost you more than you might think. That's why only LifeLock offers the $1 Million Protection Package, which covers stolen funds, experts and lawyers, and out-of-pocket expenses up to $3 million in total. Don't face the high cost of identity theft alone. Protect your future and finances with LifeLock. Join today.
Precise designs, subtle curves, curated upgrades. Elevated design for thoughtful living. Thuma.
As a physician, I fielded many patient questions about ways to prevent cancer. And while we learn more every day, we're still not there. But it was my own cancer diagnosis that motivated my total immersion into the research with one goal: to keep my cancer from ever returning. The human body is incredibly capable of protecting us, but we have to do our part. We have to give it the ammunition it needs to fight. My studies led me to create SHIELD, the first of its kind protective nutraceutical system. SHIELD combines 10 high-dose natural ingredients to super boost your immune system and support cellular detoxification. SHIELD is just that, a shield of rare and powerful nutrients to support cellular health and to help fend off disease, so you can live life to the fullest.
Save $25 with promo code LIVE at victoryagainstcancer.com.
Total Beats, America's best-selling Beats brand, is available at Walmart. Total Beats blood pressure support soft chews contain a key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support. Take control of your health. Head to Walmart and get Total Beats blood pressure support soft chews today.
And it's day 13 in the Nancy Guthrie kidnapping case. As far as we know, there are no suspects. But TMZ, though, is getting more and more information. TMZ executive producer Charles Latibeaudiere joins me. Charles, what's the latest?
The latest, Greta, is that just about, an hour ago, we got a third note from this person who claims to know the identity of the kidnapper. This is the third consecutive day, I believe now, we have gotten a note from this person. And you'll remember the last time we talked about this, they said this is going to be the last time you'll ever hear from me. Well, they explained that they are reaching out once again only because they saw that the FBI upped the reward to $100,000. You'll recall this person was originally asking for 1 Bitcoin worth somewhere between $65,000, $67,000 in exchange for the information about the kidnapper. Well, they certainly seem to think that the upping to $100,000 was in order to embarrass them. That you're trying to discredit me is the way it's worded in the note. And the person says it's very clear that they don't trust law enforcement. And they say, the way they spell it out is, I'm going to the media, I'm doing this through the media because I don't trust you and you clearly don't trust me. So basically they're proposing a new deal now, one that will get them $100,000, but that will address the mistrust. The way they're laying this out is to say, deposit $50,000 in Bitcoin into this account, and it's the same account that they've used the 2 previous times. And then once that I see the money is in there, I will give you the name of the individual and information for you to track their location. And then once you arrest him, then you pay me the other $50,000 also in Bitcoin. So they'll get a total of $100,000. They're also promising that they will not take out the first $50,000 until there's an arrest made. So that's the deal that they're making now, and they're saying that this is going to be their best opportunity, the only way that they're going to catch this person. And now, very interestingly, Greta, they say the main individual, that I will give you the name of the main individual, that certainly insinuates that there are accomplices involved here.
Charles, 2 things. One is that there's no indication she's alive, right? That she's even alive in any of these notes that this person knows, right?
They don't say. I will say this: they do say something about Nancy's current status that I don't want to say at this point, just because, again, we have shared this with the FBI, and there are certain things that they, for sake of the investigation, they don't want us to reveal here.
Has the FBI suggested that you respond to this person and say, just give me some sort of clue to prove that you are really in the know? Because, I mean, this could be any kook. I mean, they're not even giving any inside information that this person's even in the know.
Again, we have no way of reaching out to this person. There is, when you send in an email on the tip line, on our tip email inbox, you can be as anonymous as you want. Some people do include a real email and a real phone number because they want us to reach out to them. This person has not done that. In fact, each email has had a slightly different name attached to it, and it's always a fake email address that they write in there.
Charles, thank you. Charles of TMZ getting all these notes, and maybe maybe they'll give you a little clue. Who knows? Thank you, Charles.
I don't know.
Have a good weekend.
All right, you too. Thanks.
The clock is ticking. In just under 8 hours, if the House and the Senate do not work things out, or a miracle does not strike Washington, the funding of the Department of Homeland Security ends. Tonight's midnight deadline is a result of a 2-week extension that was agreed upon to give lawmakers time to negotiate an agreement for DHS funding. What's holding up the funding is, of course, a disagreement between the two political parties. Democrats have a list of demands that are related to ICE and other federal agencies. Republicans don't agree with those demands. This potential DHS shutdown would impact agencies related to border security, disaster response, and travel. Remember, just last fall, TSA agents went without pay during the 43-day government shutdown. That shutdown ended in late November. And yesterday, Democratic Senator from Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, took to X to say, quote, "Shutting DHS down has zero impact and zero changes for ICE. ICE already has $75 billion in funding from the big, beautiful bill that I did not vote for, but it will hit FEMA, Coast Guard, TSA, and our cybersecurity agency. As a Democrat, I cannot vote to shut down critical parts of our government," end quote. Meanwhile, it is getting so creepy, creepier by the hour, as the Epstein cancer metastasizes. It has now hit former President Barack Obama's White House. Chief Legal Officer and General Counsel of Goldman Sachs, as well as former White House counsel to President Barack Obama, Kathy Rumler, has announced her resignation from Goldman Sachs. This comes after emails between Epstein and Rumler were released. The emails showed a close relationship where Rumler referred to Epstein as uncle. In 2016, Epstein gave Rumler a $9,350 Hermes purse. In 2018, he gave Rumler a Fendi coat and a bag costing around $6,800. She also received other gifts from the disgraced financier, including wine, flowers, and a massage at the Four Seasons in Washington, D.C. Rumler released a statement that reads, quote, "Since I joined Goldman Sachs 6 years ago, it has been my privilege to help oversee the firm's legal, reputational, and regulatory matters, to enhance our strong risk management processes, and to ensure that we live by our core value of integrity in everything we do. My responsibility is to put Goldman Sachs' interests first," end quote. Goldman CEO David Solomon released a separate statement that reads, quote, "As one of the most accomplished professionals in her field, Kathy has also been a mentor and friend to many of our people, and she will be missed. I accepted her resignation, and I respect her decision," end quote. Rumler's resignation date will be June 30th of this year. Coming up, with Congress debating whether to require identification to vote, how do members of Congress vote? Do they need to show an ID? You're going to find out when the record continues.
The press won't report the real story.
The American people are actually very smart.
Ridiculous statements.
These guys are just plain weird.
Actual scandals.
Even the immunity decision. I mean, that decision was so misreported.
That's my job, and I aim to do it every night.
For years, Debbie always hid her smile. It had just become habit. The covering hand, the moment stifled. But with her new teeth from affordable dentures and implants, Debbie now beams with the power of 1,000 suns. Not a hovering hand in sight. Shine on, Debbie. Shine on. Affordable dentures and implants. That's what we do.
If anyone has told you that gaining weight, feeling tired, and joint issues is just a part of getting older, they are wrong. My name is Dr. Stephen Guthrie, and I found a new way to support my health. It's called BioComplete 3. BioComplete 3 works by restoring your gut health from the inside out. This is working for everybody.
I was 270. I'm now 140. It just feels amazing.
You can try BioComplete 3 risk-free for 90 days. Go to GundryMD.com/TV.
Hi, I'm former Major League All-Star Lee Mazzilli. I'm proud to have played in New York for both the Mets and the Yankees. I'm also proud to be a longtime supporter of Tunnel to Towers Foundation. T2T helps our firefighters, our police, our soldiers, and their families. You can join their cause as well. Just $11 a month will help these brave men and women who keep us safe. Go to T2T.org for more information on how your donation can help.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, Doctor.
I'm Elmer Heinrich. At 91 years of age, here with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now, both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now, we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you.
It really is incredible.
Yeah, try it. You will be surprised. Order now. You'll be glad you did.
When I'm congested, I can't breathe, can't sleep. That's why I Navage. The powered suction gives me the power to remove congestion fast by flushing out germs, mucus, bacteria, and viruses. In like 30 seconds, I can feel the results.
Get #1 doctor-recommended Navage.
Uh-oh, this time it's Republicans' turn to yell hypocrisy. They're shouting hypocrisy on their Democrat counterparts. This is why. Most Democrats in Congress oppose the SAVE Act. That stands for Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. If the SAVE Act is passed, voters will be required to show proof of citizenship to register to vote and must show identification at the time of voting. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer calls the SAVE Act, quote, Jim Crow 2.0. Now, Jim Crow laws, as you know, refers to a system of laws that legally enforced racial segregation and discrimination. Republicans are having none of it. They're firing back, calling the Democrats out. They're making their case by pointing their finger directly at Congress. Have you ever tried to get into Congress here in Washington to see your representative or senator, you as a citizen? Well, better bring a picture identification card or you won't get into the building. Members of Congress, including Democrats, want to make sure they know who's visiting them on Capitol Hill. And there's more. Members of Congress need to show their own photo IDs when voting on laws. Texas Congressman Michael Cloud actually demonstrated this. He posted this photo where a member of Congress must first submit his or her photo ID, and then, and only after then, the member of Congress can cast his or her vote. By the way, voting electronically has been happening since 1973. On Wednesday, the House voted to advance the SAVE Act to the Senate. Ironically, the 230 Democrats who voted against the SAVE Act had to each insert his photo ID before he could vote against the SAVE Act. Texas Republican Congressman Michael Cloud, who serves in the House Oversight Committee, joins me. Nice to see you, sir. And I saw your tweet where you put this on. Does anyone on the Democratic side of the aisle think it's peculiar that that you have to show your identification? You know, each one of them has to vote on a law, but they don't want citizens to have to show ID?
Well, there was one that voted with us, and the rest I don't think are willing to admit it. They know that this is something that the American people want. It's not controversial anywhere else but the halls of Congress. It's common sense. The rest of America is trying to figure out why this is even an issue in Congress. This should glide through the House. It should glide through the Senate. But instead, what we see is they're drawing at straws to come up with every reason to try to justify a no vote on this.
Well, they look a little silly when you have to have an ID, a picture ID, to get in to see them. And they look a little silly when you have to use a photo ID to vote on the floor. And probably more importantly is that when you look at the polls, it's like over 80% of the American people think you should show an identification when you vote. So, I mean, the headwind against them is hard on this one.
Oh, very much so. And, that's why we passed this out of the House, and we're looking forward to debate in the Senate over it. I'd like to hear the Democrats, if we can get past the seated or pocket zombie filibuster that they have and get to a real debate on it. I'd like to see them go a couple days trying to defend voting against something that is such common sense. And certainly, you know, the day we walked off the floor of the SAVE, voting for the SAVE Act, I was struck by the irony of this situation because, yeah, that picture of the box we posted, you have to slide your photo ID in it to activate it so that you can vote.
I mean, it's a good. I mean, everyone should be able to vote as a citizen. And I mean, why not come up with another solution? We could have mobile vans for the next year and a half before the presidential election, or 2.5 years, to go out and find people, government vans or whatever. I mean, there must be some system so that people aren't disenfranchised who might need an ID. I mean, there might be some outreach, but instead we're fighting about this.
Exactly, and even the legislation that we passed allows for a provisional ballot process. So we've really thought through the concerns that people would have and worked through it because we just want secure elections. That's what the American people want. We want people to be able to vote, but we want to know that we can trust the results.
All right. Well, you're pretty active on X, and I noticed that you've joined the memes of Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Explain this new one that you posted.
Well, it's fun. We all appreciate the wonderful job that he's doing and the many hats that he's been wearing on behalf of the American people, and he's doing such a fabulous job. But with Valentine's coming up this week, our team thought it'd be fun to play along with all the memes we've seen. And this is Marco Rubio realizing that he's going to be your Valentine this week. No, not you personally, but everybody in general.
It's been quite a rage. It's been quite a rage. I mean, it's quite funny, and I hope he's a good sport about it. I mean, it's not mean-spirited at all, but he's dressed in every single type of outfit for every single event because he has so many jobs that he has over at the White House. So he seems to be a good sport about it, though. So that's good.
Yeah, and he's doing a great job, and that's why people like having a little fun with it. And awesome to see somebody who's in there and taking the bull by the horns, really, and putting a lot of work and effort to it. Certainly better than what we saw in the last administration.
Congressman Michael Cloud, thank you, sir.
Thank you. God bless you.
Meanwhile, Russia's continued war on Ukraine has forced thousands of Ukrainian students to move their education underground. Foreign correspondent Shelby Wilder, who has been to Ukraine so many times since the war began 4 years ago, just traveled to Ukraine's front lines to see how children are coping.
We're in a frontline town in eastern Ukraine, and Russian positions are only about 12 to 15 miles from here. It was extremely dangerous just to get to this location. We have come here to a kindergarten where their children range in age from 2 to 5 years old. And we're looking at education under siege because of Russia's war. These children are caught in the crossfire of the conflict. Their parents might be in the military, fighting not very far away, or perhaps are state workers, keeping these frontline cities and towns running. But these children are in extremely dangerous, difficult conditions. Civilians are killed here frequently, including children, due to Russia's ongoing attacks. And the children here are currently without power. They have a generator, but it only lasts so long. And so today, for example, they are in darkness. We have brought our own lights to be able to film them under these conditions.
My name is Olena. I work here as a teacher at this kindergarten. Our classes take place in a basement because our city is close to the front line and it is dangerous here. Drones, bombs, and missiles fly over the city very often. There are many children here. And they have the right to receive an education, to communicate, and to socialize with other kids. Of course, we worry about them. People abroad often ask why children are here at all. But for these children, this is their home. They do not really have another option right now. We believe this is the safest possible choice under the circumstances. Those who could leave here already did. But many people return because support for displaced families is often insufficient. It is very hard to find a job and housing, and without money, it is impossible to live. And we pray for a miracle. We do not know how or when this will end, but we believe it will.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be a ballerina.
What would you wish for? What do you hope for?
I have never seen the seaside. My brother went to the cinema when he was younger, but I've never been. So I wish to go to the cinema and the sea.
Do you know there's a war happening? Do you feel safe? No.
Sometimes I'm scared. I get scared when there's a big boom near us, whether it's where we are going or close to our house. I'm afraid. When I'm scared, I hide somewhere, like in the wardrobe, in the bathroom, or under the bed. Tonight, there was a shahed near our house, and then we lost power. The shaheds buzz when they're flying, but when they come down, it's a big boom.
Both children and adults have gotten used to this reality. The children's vocabulary has changed. They talk about drones, missiles, and bombs, but we try not to talk about the war with the children. We focus on normal, positive things, activities, life, learning. Sometimes the children mention things among themselves, but we do not dwell on it. We hope for your support and understanding. And I want to say that Donbass is Ukraine. The people who live here want to continue living here in Ukraine, and we truly hope for your help.
Well, great reporting by my colleague Shelley Wilder in Ukraine. And the anniversary, 4-year anniversary, is coming up in about 2 weeks of the war starting. Coming up, what you don't know about the Supreme Court. It has to do with who likes who. My colleague James Rosen has just published a new book. That one, the record continues.
Falls are the #1 cause of injury to senior citizens. Falling down stairs can be disastrous. Acorn Stair Lifts has the solution. Just don't fall. Sit, relax, ride with an Acorn Stair Lift, the world's leader in stair lifts. That's right, don't let limited mobility keep you from going up and down your stairs, even outside. Call Acorn Stair Lifts now for a free information kit and no obligation quote. Now you can safely ride with your Acorn Stair Lift.
Now I don't have to worry about him climbing those stairs anymore.
And our Acorn Stair Lift was very affordable.
Our Acorn Stair Lift is definitely more affordable than moving.
The Acorn Stair Lift has a padded seat and backrest for maximum comfort. It easily folds up for access to the stairway. 5 safety sensors stop your Acorn Stair Lift if there is something in the way. And it even runs during power outages.
I am king of my castle again.
You'll be working directly with the world's leader in stair lifts. That's right, there's no middleman. Acorn's trained technicians professionally install your stair lift directly to the staircase. In most cases, in 2 hours or less. There's no need for special construction. We don't leave until you're completely comfortable using your Acorn Stair Lift.
Don't risk a serious fall going down the stairs.
I was really surprised at how little it cost.
Call for your free no-obligation information kit and quote from Acorn Stair Lifts. Just don't fall. Safely ride up and down your steps.
Give your life a lift with Acorn Stair Lifts.
Call 1-800-908-4077 right now for your free information kit or visit our website today. That number again is 1-800-908-4077. Call now.
You deserve high quality. You really do. At Balance of Nature, we don't cut corners. We could cut corners or extract individual vitamins and minerals rather than source whole foods. But that's not who we are. We don't isolate one specific part and sell it alone. Why? Because phytonutrients are woven into the whole plant. Everything works together as one complete package the way nature intended. Balance of Nature supplements aren't dried juice or a powdered extract. They are a vibrant mix of ingredients of 47 whole fruits, vegetables, spices, and fibers. Each ingredient then goes through a tailored vacuum-cooled process, is grounded into a fine powder, and packed into plant-based capsules in order to preserve those naturally occurring phytonutrients. We are real ingredients only, always. Start your journey with Balance of Nature supplements. Go to balanceofnature.com and subscribe and save today.
10 years ago today, 79-year-old Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, on a hunting trip in Texas, died. It was the end to an era on the High Court. Earlier today, Justice Scalia's son, Christopher Scalia, posted this picture on X. The caption, 10 years ago. Justice Scalia served the Supreme Court 30 years, 1986 to 2016, and without a doubt, Scalia was a conservative force on the court. He had strong opinions, made people laugh, and he had an impact on you and generations to come. Our chief Washington correspondent, James Rosen, has just published his second book on the Supreme Court justice. The book was released this week. Earlier, I spoke with James. I'm joined by my colleague, James Rosen. He has his second book out on Justice Scalia. This is from 1986 to 2001 when the justice was on the court. Nice to see you, James.
Thank you for having me, Greta.
It's amazing. You know more about Scalia than any 6 people I know.
That and $2 will get you on the Metro in Washington. But I'm grateful to be able to talk about the book with our viewers. This is, as you say, the second volume in what is going to be a 3-volume project. The first book came out about 3 years ago. It was called Scalia: Rise to Greatness. And it took you up until the moment he sits down on the Supreme Court. This book covers his first half of his nearly 30 years on the Supreme Court, the first day he sits down, up until Bush v. Gore.
Why do you choose him? There are lots of justices.
He was unique, and he is really not just an important justice, but one of the most important Americans of the last 100 years. If you want to understand modern America and how we got here, you need to understand Antonin Scalia and his philosophy. He changed the way the law is written, drafted, passed, enacted, argued before judges and justices, and ultimately decided and interpreted. And his key to doing this was something called originalism. Instead of interpreting the Constitution or any statute that's been passed since with a broad latitude for today's judge who can decide what it means, who can decide that it means something it never actually meant, because they feel it's a living Constitution. It should expand with the times to cover the internet or nuclear weapons or other things that the founders couldn't anticipate. Scalia stood athwart all that. He said, no, the Constitution's not a living document, it's not a dead document, it's an enduring document. It was a legal text, and it's binding.
I'll tell you where I disagree with him about this, is that all the conservative justices who followed suit with Justice Scalia, they speak about this. Yet when it came to the Fourth Amendment and search and seizure, they were all very willing to accept exceptions to the Fourth Amendment search warrant requirement, and they suddenly weren't looking at strict construction. They were saying, oh, but.
I think Justice Scalia would have told you, and he addressed this kind of criticism many times, that originalism was not a perfect philosophy for how to go about the central business of a judge, which is to interpret what the law means. Judges adopting the living Constitution model felt free to say, well, it meant that in this time, but today it means this because I decide so. And that's really a vehicle for judges to graft their own policy preferences onto the law.
You know what? I get a lot of inside scoop that I've never heard or remembered before. So that's what I love about the book. It's not just his opinions, but he was unanimously 98. There were 2 missing. 98-0, he was confirmed, which you don't see these days, justices. And today he wouldn't get 98-0. Nobody would. It's a different time. But at the time, the committee chairman was then Senator Biden.
The committee chairman, that was for the Bork hearings the year later.
For the Bork hearings, yes. But Biden voted for him.
Yes.
And then later, as you write in your book, Biden said that it was a mistake.
Right. And Biden, at first, when he became the chairman in 1987, after the midterm elections of 1986, said that, if they send us someone who looks a lot like Scalia, I'm going to have to vote for him because I voted for Scalia. He said, I'm not Teddy Kennedy. But once pressure was applied to Chairman Biden from progressives and the Democratic Party, he started to change his tune about, well, if it looks like Scalia, I might have to vote against him. And of course, he led the kind of the inquisition against Robert Bork that really marked a new low in American politics in its time.
But Scalia's best friend, which you write about here, was Justice Ginsburg, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who he worked alongside in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. Both of them were elevated to the Supreme Court. And if you didn't know them, you'd think they're the least likely to be pals.
Yes, they were an odd couple of sorts, but there they were together, dressed up in opera costumes, appearing on stage in the Washington Opera at the Kennedy Center together. And a few weeks later, there they are, the 2 of them riding an elephant together in India. The world had never before seen images of such a close friendship on the Supreme Court between 2 justices, and let alone such a fine example of friendship overcoming differences based on ideology, party affiliation, gender, ethnicity. They were as different as could be from each other. But it was in the first book, by the way, that I got to use Ruth Bader Ginsburg's papers from her time on the D.C. Circuit Court, where the memos and the kiddings and the kibitzing is flying back and forth between Scalia and Ginsburg as appellate judges. This is before they get to the Supreme Court. You could really follow in real time, in their own words, the flourishing of this famous friendship.
All right, jump into his head. I know we're going to make a little bit of this in the third book, but what would he think about today?
I have an easy trapdoor for that
Okay,
question.
what's the easy trapdoor for that question?
Because his great contribution was originalism, the idea that latter-day judges should not graft their policy positions onto an enduring text that was enacted by the Congress and signed by the president. So here we are. It's the 10th anniversary of his passing this week, and I'm loath to try to ascribe to Antonin Scalia a decade after his passage from the scene particular thoughts about today's events and personalities. Suffice to say that I think he would have been appalled, and Justice Alito told me this recently in an interview, that Scalia would have been appalled at the coarseness of our politics and our political discourse.
Well, I think it's a problem, and I've done it myself here, is that when I make a remark about a Supreme Court justice, there are occasions where I say who appointed the person. And I think that these justices, they supposedly try to keep politics out of it, but we in the media keep saying, which party appointed you.
Another distinction that is made is between the liberal bloc and the conservative bloc, and really it's not about liberal or conservative, it's about what is your philosophy, what is your methodology for being a judge? Do you think that the text should reign supreme? That's the originalist bloc. Do you think that we should bypass the text and look at lawmakers' intent? What did they say in the floor speeches? What did they say in the committee reports? That's the living Constitution bloc that tends to be the liberals, 6-3 right now on this.
Okay, best friends of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Did he have someone that he was not particularly fond of on the court?
I think if there was a single justice of whom Scalia would have said good riddance when he left, it would have been the late Harry Blackmun, the author of Roe versus Wade. Scalia had been a fierce critic of Roe on television as an academic in the 1970s, so certainly Harry Blackmun was not thrilled to see Scalia arrive at the court. And when he did, and this is revealed in the book, these documents had never been published before, Blackmun and his clerks in chambers would get the bench memos, these case summaries from Scalia's clerks, and they would write disparaging remarks about Scalia's and his clerks in their own hand on these memos saying Federalist, Federalist, as they were members of the Federalist Society, the conservative network of students and
that's considered
lawyers.
a slur.
And it was a scarlet letter. And Blackmun, far from discouraging this kind of thing, encourages it with his own handwriting. It went on for years, and among the Scalia clerks who was thusly disparaged in Blackmun's chambers was Christopher Landau, today our Deputy Secretary of State.
It's amazing. Anyway, it's a great book, second volume. It's not just for lawyers and law students.
Absolutely.
It actually is for everybody. And it's not just law. It's a history book more than a law book by far, I think.
It's a biography, and it's often funny as hell because Scalia was.
He was very funny, yes, indeed. James Rosen, congratulations.
Thank you, Greta.
Coming up, you won't believe what Reverend Franklin Graham sent me. That's next.
I lost 110 pounds. You couldn't tell at all because of my excess skin. So Novella changed that.
Introducing the new Lift EX, the just one visit total body transformation.
I decided to give Sonobello a try. You can see my waist.
Lift EX is our breakthrough 360-degree body lift alternative that sculpts, tightens, and lifts your stomach, waist, thighs, and backside. And Lift EX is exclusively available at Sonobello. Easy monthly plans make your best body more affordable than ever. Call to book your free consultation today.
Dog grooming genius here. No, over here. And I live for operational excellence. Cute makeovers? I see a shop in sync. Thanks to Genius. Scheduling personalized. Checkouts flawless. Real-time reviews for the win. From game day crowds worldwide to running this shop. Perfectly executed. Big league reliability for any business. That's Genius.
The sound of an American original. It's the Omaha Steaks President's Day event, and we're celebrating with our President's Day assortment. All for just $99.99. Save 50% site-wide and get free burgers when you visit omahasteaks.com/TV today.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, at 91 years of age, here with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now, both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now, we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you.
It really is incredible.
Yeah, try it. You will be surprised. Order now. You'll be glad you did.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time.
Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, doctor.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dried premium meats, fruit, and vegetables, and they're gonna love it.
Sponsored by Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, the health of fresh food with the convenience of kibble. Visit drmartypets.com/TV.
Last week I was talking to Reverend Franklin Graham, and he mentioned that he was headed to Ushuaia to preach. Ushuaia? Where's that? So I quickly Googled it as I was talking to him, learning that it is in Argentina, it's the southernmost city in the world. I was immediately jealous and said in a rather flip manner, find me some new friends while he was there. Franklin delivers.
Greta, I am in Ushuaia. This is the very southern tip of Argentina. It's the most southern city in the world. It's at the bottom of the Andes Mountains, and we're on the Beagle Channel. Chile is just over there, but also Antarctica, just a few hundred miles away. I'm down here to tell the people of Ushuaia about God and His Son Jesus Christ, who came to save them. And I want them to know that God loves them. And guess what? I've met a few new friends right here behind me. These penguins, I've never seen penguins before except in the zoo. And this is a nesting area, and it's really kind of fun. You ought to come down here and bring John sometime. It's a lot of fun. But anyhow, this is Ushuaia, southern Argentina, on the Beagle Channel, just a few hundred miles from Antarctica. Come visit.
His mother's a great lover of animals. She would have loved that. Anyway, thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. Ed Henry, The Big Take, is next. And stay with Newsmax, of course.